I'm Daniel Anstandig.
And I'm Tracy Gilliam.
And this is Innovation 19. Welcome to Innovation 19, our new exactly 19-minute podcast on innovation, entrepreneurship, ideas, and insights that can transform our future. In this episode, we're looking at the state of broadcast advertising sales in 2021. With me on today's podcast is my longtime partner in Futuri, a visionary, Tracy Gilliam. Tracy is a veteran broadcast executive and the founder of TopLine, our software for media sales teams. We've worked together for many years. We've created all kinds of things together. We've built Futuri from our scrappy startup into the juggernaut that it is today. And it's just such a pleasure to work with you, Tracy.
Oh, you too, Daniel. It's been awesome. And I am absolutely privileged to have TopLine in Futuri because what has happened with that product has just been, beyond extraordinary.
Well, hey, it's a huge team effort, and so many wonderful people like Sophie Fry, Jim Tarantine, Clint Marsh, countless developers, analysts, software designers have been involved in cultivating the vision of TopLine into the broadcast sales software that it is today.
The product today it absolutely blows my mind, and I'm so impressed and grateful.
Well, for listeners who are not familiar with TopLine, TopLine is Futuri's sales intelligence software that uses a combination of AI and human analysis to make the sales process more efficient and successful for broadcast sales teams. We believe that every local broadcaster has a story to tell, and we want to find the data to help them tell that story.
Absolutely, and uniquely. When I started in the business, the most we had in terms of research, even though we had licensed analytics, but most of it was a media kit. I hate to admit this, but we had a wall with all these media sheets, and we'd grab our folder and we'd fill it up with all of these stories about ourselves, our brand, our station, and then run out to a client and make that client hear all about us.
And leave behind the entire wall of one sheets for them to peruse in their spare time.
Yeah, here's 35 one sheets. Enjoy. And it's impossible. You can't do that. Impossible. And they can't even stand the thought that could happen to them if they're a buyer. So absolutely, positively not the way to do it anymore. And the fact that we can tell a story that says this is the type of consumer you need to reach, and here's how we get that done for your business, your brand. It's game changing, and that's the way it should be done.
So today we're talking about the state of broadcast sales in 2021. If you have P&L responsibility, or you're a sales leader, or you're a local broadcast seller in TV or radio, this episode is for you as you think about the next year.
So if you're already in the broadcast industry, and even if you just listen to broadcast radio, you likely already know there's a lot of competition for ad dollars. It's always been that way, but add into it a pandemic, a new breed of competition, different from anything we've ever seen in the past. It's no longer about being the number one radio station on a ranker. You have to deliver the best reach for the buyer audience, not just any audience. So it's really great that we're talking about this today, because for the TV and radio sales reps out there that are competing for ad dollars against each other, they have to realize that it's not just about them. It's about all the different options in the space today, from digital, social, OTT, SEO, SEM, you name it. It's a really difficult time to be in this business right now, and add COVID to the mix. There's just not a simple solution, and clients have a more difficult time than ever figuring out what is right for their advertising dollars.
Oh, totally agree. And, we have a unique perspective on this because we work with hundreds of broadcasters across America in all kinds of markets. We're having conversations about planning for 2021. So today, our team put together some of the trends that we've been seeing, some predictions for the state of broadcast sales in 2021, and suggestions on how you can be massively successful in the new year. Trend number 1, advertisers are focusing on targeting, audience engagement, efficiency, and accountability for performance.
Oh, for certain. The expectation that we deliver a campaign summary at the end and say, this is what we delivered, that's also a new thing. You would think it would always be that way, but it certainly hasn't been. Definitely been a significant shift in recent years that we can't just rely on impressions to deliver a campaign. Now it's about multiple channels. Now it's about different expectations related to a campaign. Think about it this way. TV and radio are the best in class mass reach medium. That's why you and I love it. We understand it. It's all about covering a mass amount of audience in one single message. But there's all these other mechanisms now to do targeted. messaging, whether it's digital and social. So now a sales rep in TV and radio has to give a campaign that not only includes mass reach, but all of these other components of a campaign to drive the buying decision-making. So we have to not only give them a campaign that does that, but delivers results and gives them an ROI, result to say, we did this.
We're definitely seeing more pressure to show that even though you provide broad reach, you also are providing an audience that is targeted and well matched to your brand's goals and your marketing objectives. But the point you raise brings us to an important second trend, and that is justification. Agencies now have to deal with pressure to show justification for their media buying decisions. And as the world gets more technical and analytical, buyers also want to see how efficient broadcast advertising was in terms of driving awareness or lead generation.
That's right. And it's difficult to prove because it's new. The attribution models are new. Frequency always matters, but to say this is how many people actually heard this ad is still challenging for the industry. So I would say proof of performance, that the spots ran at a certain time, providing endorsement ads to show that this is what our talent said on your behalf, giving them actual promo copy and actual air checks. All of that is super important, and it needs to be done quickly. Right after the campaign ends. It shouldn't take days, let alone weeks. It should be done as quickly and swiftly as possible so the advertiser knows this is how we delivered for this particular campaign.
Trend number 3, it is harder to get a prospective ad buyer's attention, and persistence is not enough. It used to be said that persistence beats resistance, but now just pinging somebody over and over again is a one-way ticket to the junk folder. And what's harder is, it's not like there's one contact at an agency anymore for a buy.
It's getting not just the ad agency planner or buyer's attention, but the advertiser directly. That's more difficult than ever because it's a crowded space. There's more and more people vying for their attention. And I would say agencies are getting more and more protective and insulative with their advertising buyer and their client, that they don't want media reps in their space. So, getting an attention is really hard. And I think as often as we can to arm that seller with intellect and insight into the buyer so that you can cut through the clutter and eliminate multiple calls, the better.
So as Sophie Fry says all the time at Futuri, a valid business reason, or VBR, really shortens the amount of time it takes to get in the door.
You have to have something of meaning. Nobody has time for chit chat and idle conversation. It's what are you going to do for me? And how is my time with you going to be meaningful to my business?
Trend number 4, COVID is shifting and accelerating trends. So due to changes in the marketplace that were prompted by COVID in 2020, there are definitely some new opportunities. There are emerging consumer categories that broadcasters could target: home delivery services, home and professional cleaning services, online courses, technology for business, bulk shopping, financial services, immunity building clinics. There are more and more opportunities now for businesses that might not be traditional media buyers, like childcare services or senior services. So COVID has in some ways been very detrimental to our business, and yet it has accelerated certain trends and opened new opportunities for us too, for the people who are looking for them.
Right. You definitely have to do your research and know that this is a changing time. And the fact that most are working from home has changed the business categories that are being targeted. It used to always be automotive as number one advertiser for broadcast media. What you just went through, you didn't say auto one time. So it is a different world. It is a different space. And we do have to adjust and adapt to this being the next normal and make sure that we're targeting those categories that are not traditional to broadcast television and radio for advertising.
Trend number 5, multi-platform influencer campaigns. Now you have on-air endorsements combined with social posts, podcasts, videos, streaming.
And this goes to what we were talking at the very beginning. It's, to say it's as simple as gross impressions in a campaign or just doing so many spots. An endorsement campaign has to go through every single channel that advertiser is using. So that representative has to speak on all those platforms as you just identified and do so consistently. And, something that we're dealing with in the industry right now as a result of COVID and the economic shakeup it's caused is that there are just fewer and fewer talent to do those campaigns. That's the sad truth. There aren't as many
and
people.
fewer and fewer reps too, which leads us to another trend, and that is that media brands are expecting more from their reps, and there are fewer reps.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, I think sales, okay, on the sales front, I think sales talent, really good ones, they can stand the test of time with difficult economic times and even a pandemic. When I went through a couple of recessions, the dot-com boom, all these things in my career, I said the best will get through this. If they will persevere. And I believe the same talents apply today. If you have true grit, you get it, you're smart, you have good intellect, you understand what the advertiser's going through and your media buyers and agencies are going through, you'll help them through it. And I think more than ever, you have to be a resource. You have to be an expert and be able to provide them with insight and intelligence to help them through this. And I'm not talking about saying, oh, here's 50 free spots, I'll help you through it. Oh my gosh, no. Right. It's about helping them and coaching them through maintaining consistency at a time that is so uncertain.
That's so true. The good ones stand the test of time, whether it's a seller or a buyer.
I'll give you an example of an advertiser I worked with for years in St. Louis, Missouri, Dave Sinclair Ford. Dave Sinclair Sr. always advertised and always had his message consistently every single day, even through 9/11, even through all the different economic recessions we experienced. He stayed. His message changed. He wasn't oblivious to what was going on in the world. He changed and catered and crafted his message around what the world was going through. But he wasn't always in your face selling. He was a human being that related. And I think that's where the advertisers maintain consistency, continue on. You can't afford not to be in the space. Just do it differently and uniquely, creatively to make it even more relevant than ever.
I love that story. There's so much to be said for that resilience. And I know we can both think of people who, when there's a big challenge, they rise to the occasion. And then there are others that hide.
And for sure, at the beginning, it was certainly obvious that everybody kind of pumped the brakes when COVID first came out and said, oh, let's just ride this out. The ones who did it right just stayed the course and changed the message and maybe changed the approach, understanding that things were different. And here we are. Those that kept the course and stayed focused are going to be way ahead than those that did not.
Another trend, local is a huge advantage. Local buys are still where it's at in terms of percentage of revenue for most media companies, and there's more and more focus on national and regional opportunities, but local communities and local networks are seriously important leverage for media companies. Huge differentiation opportunity when it comes to targeting and understanding the local, unique audience.
Well, look at how we're dealing with COVID as a country. There isn't one set hard rule across America. Every state has done what's right for that state. And the same is true in the course of local ad buying. It's you got to do what's right for your community, your consumer, and that person's in your own backyard. So that is what is obviously so important, is just making sure you have hyper awareness to what's going on where you live, and making sure you're adapting the message and approach to meet the needs of the consumers in that community.
All right, so let's talk about some predictions related to the most resilient sales teams. Now, recently, we did a survey with broadcast sales teams across the country, and we asked what they were most comfortable with versus least comfortable with when it came to certain assets that they could sell. And they were most comfortable with traditional on-air spots, live events, short-duration units, and traditional on-air endorsements. They were least comfortable with podcasts, virtual events, video content, mobile content, and branded content. That's tough because there's more and more revenue going to these types of assets in 21.
Definitely.
So bottom line, successful sales teams have to embrace every tool in the toolkit, every asset.
And it's funny that you say that, because honestly, I heard that, that was the case 20 years ago. I shouldn't be laughing, but truly it was that way a couple decades ago, because I was managing sales teams going, how come no one can sell anything but the over-the-air spots? So I think that's been the case all along. The question, really the challenge now is to the sales teams out there. It's like, let's go, let's embrace, let's move on. A multi-channel is the way it's at. You're targeting an advertiser because you have a consumer that they want more of. So do what's right to get that done. And if it's more than over the air and it requires a digital campaign, a podcast, an original podcast, even a sponsorable video, do what you need to do to make that happen. That's the job to be done for the client.
So let's talk expectations for next year. I don't know if you're hearing the same thing. I'm hearing that a lot of broadcasters are budgeting and planning for 2021 based on
19. Yeah.
Yes. Which is going to prove difficult. Right. I mean, things are not going to be business as usual as soon as the new year arrives.
Well, first of all, Q1 of 2020 is going to look pretty good because we went into this pre-pandemic in March. So everybody was they had a pretty strong first quarter. So even if you went up against 2020's Q1, it's going to be a tough putt. Obviously, the comps of the remaining part of 2020 aren't going to be hard to beat because it was just so abysmal. We all went through this. It wasn't an isolated event. It wasn't one market, one station. It wasn't like an environmental event, a natural disaster. It was something unprecedented.
But from an audience standpoint, local TV and local radio fared pretty well through the pandemic. So there is data to go tell a positive story in the new year.
So we all have to take the data that we have, whether it's streaming metrics, podcast metrics, social media, SEO, SEM, digital website impressions, all of it, and use it to our advantage to tell the story.
And not be afraid of talking about what's changed, too.
Everyone will understand that the consumer behavior has changed. I mean, our day parts have changed. Morning drive isn't as early as it used to be because we're not commuting. So everything has to pivot, and data analytics should be our friend and definitely be part of our arsenal to tell the story.
In our recent survey, 4 out of 5 broadcast sellers say that since the onset of COVID, they're using different data to position their station compared to what they did before the pandemic. So now there's this kind of mindset change in how we even sell.
Yeah. You mean it goes beyond, the ratings, so to speak. I mean, qualitative is critical. Telling a story about the consumer's likelihood to do something quantitatively is more important than ever. It goes beyond a % of the population reach. When I started TopLine in 2009, I remember getting interviewed about, why TopLine was created. And I said, because every station has a story. Every station has a reason to be and has its unique brand and the unique target. And for the right advertiser, if you want more of those consumers, you got to play to those strengths. And it may not be about 100,000 people listening at a given period. It may be fewer, but if they're qualified consumers with the right, income or spending lifestyle or qualitative makeup, you don't need as many. You just need to hit the right people at the right time.
Becoming that resource to the buyer where you help them to reach the right consumers makes you indispensable.
That's right. And you'll be able to really control the relationship where you're coaching that buyer into the right things to do. And you have a lot more credibility and respect in deciding how the dollars are spent. Because if you're an expert and you understand it, you can help drive that decision making. And that's a good thing for both you and the advertiser. You want to be an expert. And I think that has been tried and true since I got into the business. Knowledge is so important. And if you can share it with your partner, the more likely you'll retain them through your career. You'll have a partner for life.
Well, Tracy, thank you for being my business partner for life. I
Ditto.
love working with you. And thank you for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an incredible ride. I love it. And I'm excited for our future. It's been an incredible time with you, and I'm honored and privileged to be a part of Futuri.
The best is still ahead.
Definitely.
If you're in sales leadership or in the field day-to-day in broadcast sales, hopefully this episode has given you some new ideas and some good context for 2021. If you're interested in TopLine, you can find more information at futurimedia.com/topline. This has been Innovation 19.